Hey guys, this is Mark Owings, and I'm your host for the Unbridled Life Podcast, where we have real, raw, and unreligious conversation to encourage and challenge men and women in their daily lives.
Hello, we're back. Your favorite four women.
Woo-hoo!
Welcome to the Unbridled Life Podcast. My name is Ellie Owings, and I am still taking over for Mark Owings.
Yay!
And you're doing great.
Thank
We're
you.
very proud of you.
Thank you so much. And we are journeying through these 5 determined women of the Bible. I'm here with Miss Shauna Worth.
Hello. It's good to be here. Yes.
And Miss Kimmy.
Thank you.
And my beautiful mama. So if you haven't gotten a chance to listen to the last 3 podcasts, we've done Deborah, a prophet and a warrior in Israel. We've done Mary Magdalene, a friend of Jesus and a testifier of the good news. And last week we talked about Ruth, a woman who counted the cost and was determined to stay. Mm-hmm. Today we're going to talk about Lydia.
Listen, Lydia.
She is only mentioned in 2 verses in the whole Bible, but apparently she makes a big, big impact. She was a catalyst for a big movement in the early church. And have you ever met somebody that just gives so freely and so joyfully that it like encourages you to be around them?
Yes.
This was Lydia. She knew people that knew people that knew people that knew people. We all know those people.
Yeah.
And she didn't use this influence to kind of flaunt her stuff and to win the popularity contest at the market. She used it to serve and to give and to spread the gospel and the kingdom. And there's no better person to kick us off.
Oh, that's hilarious that you're looking at me right now.
Somebody that uses her influence and her gifts to honor
she does.
You know, the Lord told me a couple years ago to get ready because I was going to start hosting, and I was like, Jesus, did you mean the girl next door? Because you may have got the wrong girl. But as we're going to discuss kingdom hosting and, worldly hosting.
2 different things.
2 different things, yeah.
You've got them both. I would say when I go to your home, there is peace and joy and the presence of the Lord.
Thank you.
It's a great place to go and be.
Thank you.
And truly, when we say there's a disco ball, there is a disco ball in this girl's kitchen.
Disco ball.
So, yeah.
Well, atmospheres are important to me. And honestly, as I was thinking about this, all the women in my family, all of them, and on Kyle's side too, they're incredible hosters. Wow. As Mark told my mom and my sister, they drip with hospitality.
Wow.
But I am like the unicorn in the family because I just can't quite get it together. And in the beginning of trying to host things, I thought everything had to be perfect, but people would come in my home and they could probably feel how stressed out I was and that I'd just been screaming at everybody, So thank you for saying that because that is something I've cultivated. And I've realized you don't have to be superwoman to host. You can let others help you. But atmospheres matter. But we just jumped right off into the deep end with old Lydia.
Yes.
Les, will you read the scripture? Because I'm going to be very honest.
Definitely.
It's okay if you don't even remember Lydia. I didn't either.
Yep.
So
Yes. In Acts 16:14, it says she was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. When she and the members of her household were baptized, she invited us over to her home. If you consider me a believer in the Lord, she said, come and stay at my house. And she persuaded us.
I love it. There's nothing like a bossy woman. You know what I'm saying? Like you can just hear her being like, no, I insist. You're coming to stay at my house. But there's so much to unpack with Lydia. And, so many different things that I hope we get the opportunity to touch on because, yes, it was about hosting. But can we just say Lydia was doing some purple cloth business, okay?
She was a small business owner.
She was a boss Yes, girl. And I love that about her. I love the marketplace. We are in the marketplace, my husband and I, and I'm really finally embracing that even though I don't, and Leslie, you can probably, you're even more part of Elevate Him, but I'm sure you had to find your role as not just Mark's wife, not just Kyle's wife, you know, and Kyle's I don't even know what his title is, but, you know, we own a construction company and really embracing my role in the marketplace. And because I love it, I have great vision and we really want you to hear that the Lord is in all of it. Whatever He has gifted you with, whatever the passion is. I mean, she must have loved some cloth and some purple represented royalty, right? And it was very expensive too. Right. So anyway, not to digress, but there is a lot to unpack with her. So I'm going to ask you girls this question. Lydia was spiritually curious and open. What does it look like in today's culture? Because where was she? I'm going to just ask y'all. Remember where she was?
She was
yeah. Say it, Kimmy.
She was down by the river. Yeah.
And
actually,
did it not say there was a house of prayer?
yeah. So they were gathering.
Thank you.
Like, I feel like that's like when I read this, I didn't know who Lydia was either. I'd totally forgotten. I did remember purple, but I was like, why am I tying this together?
Yeah.
But I felt like the Lord was like, I see you, Lydia, down by the river.
Yeah.
With your little prayer group.
Yes.
Of people gathering. So much so, I'm going to send Paul, just a nobody in the Bible. And I'm going to meet you there. Like, and I just felt like he was like, I see you, mama.
Yes.
In the kitchen.
Come on.
With your littles running around screaming, and you're thinking, what am I doing? Like, where am I? What's happening? Or I see you, small business owner. Like, yes ma'am. Like, those are the places that the Lord is and wants to meet you. If you let Him, instead of thinking like, I'm just a mom, right? Or I'm just, I run this business. Like, this is my life. It's like, no, He sees you. He wants to meet you by the water. He wants to meet you where you are. He's so sweet.
But it's important where you go.
Yeah.
And who you choose to be around, you know? And there was a house of prayer. And, I took that, and what kind of came to me is what you feed will grow. And who you surround yourself with, I kind of said that. But I thought about a place, because it works both ways. Like, listen, when I go into Neiman Marcus, I suddenly am like, oh my gosh, I need a new pair of shoes and I need a bag. But I'm way too frugal. So anyway, but like, try that. Next time you go somewhere, see if it doesn't kind of affect your atmosphere. But a beautiful example of that in a house of prayer. Kyle and I were recently up in Redding, California, and Bethel, they have an actual house of prayer. And Benny Johnson, who has gone on to be with the Lord, but she was just an incredible intercessor. And they have a house built. And you guys, when I walked into that house, it gives me chills to kind of think about it. I started weeping because I could feel the tangible presence of the intercession and the presence of the Lord. And so I just think it's kind of cool. And I think that Lydia was in that atmosphere that Paul walked up and she immediately received the gospel and then is like, now y'all come into my house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's wild to me. So,
And I think the other thing that stood out to me is that it says she was a worshiper of God. And the very next sentence, it says, and then the Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message.
yes.
And so I read that and I'm like, well, if she was a worshiper of God, wouldn't she have been able to receive and respond to Paul's message if she worshiped God? So I looked it up, and it was likely that she was a practicing Jew.
Yes.
And she hadn't heard the gospel for face value for what it was until Paul met them by the river. And it was a gathering of women, because in this town that they're in, there wasn't a physical church body yet. There wasn't enough men. And so they had to like go search, and like they finally found, they're like, oh, finally we found them. But once she heard the gospel for what it was, that it wasn't all these rules and practices and all the things that the Pharisees made it, that she had just been going through the motions her whole life, because that's just what she did. And I can relate to that. But she heard the gospel with no strings attached, and she couldn't do anything but immediately get baptized. And baptism is a sign of surrender. And she wanted her whole family to get baptized, because she's like, this is amazing. Why haven't I heard it like this?
I heard "Be Careful" at Neiman's, and Ellie Grace just had a download. I mean, I was praying for revelation. It just went to, okay, I champion you, girl. But that is so good, and such a deep well of revelation that you just unpacked for us. So,
well, and it really shows us that we need to share the gospel. You don't need to assume that people know about the Lord. You know, I have a story that I used to tell friends, oh, I did that thing because I didn't want them to bother me about it. I didn't want them to, you know, constantly nag at me that I needed to, quote, get saved. And it was really my own timing that I was in the Theta house and walked downstairs and heard a guy sharing the gospel. And that's what changed my life, because it was the perfect time that I was open to hear and receive and said the prayer, you know, and then went and shared with others, went back to the girls and said, I lied. I really wasn't saved. And had to humble myself. But, you know, I think we should be ready to tell others and be on guard. You know?
And we've been walking through a book called Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. And it wasn't just this come down to the front of the church if you want to say this prayer. It was like she wanted to practice the way. And in that time in Acts, it was called the way. They weren't called Christians back then. They followed the way of King Jesus. And she said, I want that. I want to be with Jesus. I want to become like him, and I want to do as he did.
So good.
And it was just this like overflow of love and passion for the kingdom.
It makes me think of like, you know, I think, you know, we may have said it before, but like, what is it that I'm putting off that might be the fragrance that somebody's like, I kind of want that. Or, you know, like, what are we putting off as believers? Because if I'm disgruntled and cranky and those things happen, I'm not saying don't be real, like for sure. But if that is my countenance, you know, 99% of the time, then people don't want what I got. Like, they're not going to be like, maybe a different Jesus for me, you know, like than the one you got. So it just makes me think like, again, the people that she's around, the hunger, and then just the readiness, and just the continued, like, I'm going to keep dropping seeds. I'm going to be willing. Yeah.
That's really good. And it does make me think. I did giggle when they assigned me Lydia, and I was like, what in the world? And I read it was like she was hosting, but here's what jumped out. Her house was in order because she immediately was like, come to my house. And girls, we know, listen, you're not just inviting anybody over.
Sometimes you have to have people to come over
to do that. Nothing like a good house cleaning if you're hosting. You know what I'm saying? But the Lord, I've had a couple of dreams lately, and I know they were for me personally, because there were some things that the Lord in his love was saying, I want you to get your house in order, you know, and our internal house in order as well as our external. But in the dream, my pastor, who I think it wasn't I don't believe it's like my actual pastors coming to my house. I think he represented some things and authority because God wants to bring something to you.
Wow.
And so in the dreams, though, there was part of my house was ready, but not the entire. And I just want to encourage you, the king is coming, just like we touched on in the last podcast. And so not out of any religious, I love that you touched on that, you know, traditions or do's and don'ts and laws, but just because the joy and the hope set before us that he is coming. And I love, we in preparation, you touched on when your
house is in order, your heart's in order and your mind's in order.
Wow.
And so it's even like a thing for me in my life. If I come home and my room's messy, it's like a heart check for me of like, what's going on in my heart and my mind? Is there something that I haven't worked through or
I
processed
don't think
through?
the viewers thought they were going to get neuroscience today, but you know what? That's what
You
we're
hang
here
your belly,
for.
you gonna get it. Yeah.
But it is true. And my sister, I thought about her. I mean, because obviously the women in my family host really well. But when my sister was making a shift she was in nursing, and really her passion was interior design, and she's an incredible designer, but wrestled with, that feels a little materialistic, and all of that. And the Lord corrected her, and he said to her, probably not like this, but basically, hey, do not argue with the way I made you and the passions that I put in you. And so their business is called Revival Living because they say the same thing. Revival starts at home.
Wow.
And when you're, I feel the presence of the Lord. Shout out to Revival Living. But when your home is in order, when our exterior, hey, this just dropped on me. Do y'all know who the first spirit-filled people were in the Bible?
Ew.
The craftsmen. They were building the temple.
Oh, yeah.
So listen, God's in all of it. And so anyway, get your home in order, whatever that means. Paul may be coming. You don't know who's going to stop by.
Get your house in order.
Oh, gosh.
But I think that's beautiful that you said that everything starts in the home.
Yeah.
Because in today's world, we are more isolated than we've ever been. We can hop on a FaceTime or a Zoom call for meetings, or we can just fall for the endless scroll of TikTok or Netflix or
Numb
Reels.
the brain. That's what Ellie and I call her. You're dumbing your brain down.
The youth today call it brain rot. It is a real thing.
Scary.
Yes, there is chemicals. I am going to get sciencey on it.
I love it. Go.
There are chemicals and neurotransmitters in your brain that are detaching and forming in different ways whenever we are giving our flesh that desire and that satisfaction. And so we've lost, I think, the art of just being together.
I agree. And not to cut you off, but that makes me think some of the most radical encounters I've had with the Lord in a living room with a small group of women around me. And I want to say just everything you just said, science always, like the Bible said it first. Okay. So in Hebrews 10:24 and 25, I won't read the whole, but go look it up in the Passion Translation, because basically it says, get creative.
Yeah.
Get creative. And he says, I will read 25. This is not the time to pull away and neglect meeting together, as some have formed the habit of doing. In fact, we should come together even more frequently, eager to encourage and urge each other onward as we anticipate that day dawning. And I think, listen, they got together back then. This was probably something that was easier for that time and that culture. He is speaking to us.
Yeah.
Never has it been easier to pull away and isolate. And we have to go in and get creative and be very intentional to get to host and to spend time together and to meet.
Yeah.
Well, and just breaking bread, I think about it's such a different feeling when you go to someone's house and you have dinner together and then you talk and you fellowship. And we just have gotten away from that. But the importance of spending time together and sharing our hearts is so important.
Yeah. And
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think like that's been something for me, like coming home from college is it would be easy to just like keep my friends that live in Dallas or College Station or Houston, Austin. We're all scattered and we can still be friends, but I need people to be physically in person.
Local.
Too.
Yes.
Yeah. And for a long time, I was just like, I have friends. I might not see them all the time, but I feel connected. But at a certain point, it like gave out.
Wow.
I needed that physical interaction with people.
And I'll say you've done good. You've done really well at switching gears and finding your people in our hometown. And so I'll just shout out to you. Good job.
Shout out Lydia Young Life.
But you have to be
Gathering.
intentional, you know. You can't just wait on someone to call you. And here, you know, my thing is talking about breaking bread. It is no surprise to this table that I do not cook. I do not cook. I do not enjoy it. And I'm kind of over it. You know what I'm saying? But when the Lord asked me to open my home for a small group, immediately I just had to humble myself and receive. They brought the food. Other people brought the food. All he was asking me to do was open my home. So, you know, you don't have to do it all. And again, just be creative in finding some ways.
Yeah. And I got to be a part of that with y'all.
Yes, you did.
With the little study through Acts. And I actually, whenever I heard that we were doing Lydia, I remember reading this all together. Acts 16. And I think that was just an encouraging season for me, getting to be a part of 4 or 5 couples and a recent undergraduate student, and just getting to learn under y'all and get to see what a glimpse of maybe what the early church would have been like. And it wasn't the production and the membership, and not that anything that is bad, but it was simple and it was beautiful.
I
just needed to say that.
I agree, because Shauna, you know, you say that you're not a host, but one of the last times we came to your house, you had worship music playing. So the sound is always filling. And I know that you and Kyle create that. And so it's very tangible. Yeah. But also you walked over to the fridge and you just started pulling out some like some sausages and some cheeses. And I'm like, this is my, like that. Like you eat, but it didn't matter. The door was open. And I think that's really like one of the things is just like, where is my willingness to just open the door? And say, come, because I think people are way more hungry
for sure
and want an invite to come. And even if you say, you pick up Chick-fil-A, but I'm going to open my door. You know, like I think
the posture of your
hungry.
heart.
Well, and Kimmy, I love that you started a group in your neighborhood, like in your hometown. You know, you live all the way out in Graham, and yet you were willing to drive into town, but yet you also said, I need my people right here. And
I do.
cheers
I love
to
it.
you for doing that.
Yeah. When we moved and we were there for a while, and the Lord kept talking to me about it. And finally, he said, he's like, they're waiting. And I was like, okay, that felt a little different than just me being like, not listening to the Lord and just being like, we're gonna, you know, do that. And then, you know, it's the same thing where it's you're like, well, I want to invite people, but you know, I don't even know anybody who's going to come. And, you know, I think the first time we did it was like 12 or 14 people. And I was like,
wow.
And like we live out in the middle of nowhere. And yet people were like, the door's open.
Yeah.
You're going to come. Like not expectant of anything other than, do you want to talk about Jesus? That was it.
And it doesn't have to be beautiful. Like it can be messy. And you invite people into the mess. That was one of my favorite things in College Station. I got to be mentored by women, and they would just be like, hey, come over and hang out with me while I filled my kids' lunches. Or just come over and sit on my couch while I wash the dishes or get the kids out the door. And it was just like, and it was the best. It was the best use of my time in all of college.
Awesome. Yeah. I heard somebody say, I played bunco back in the day. I love bunco. I need to bring that back. But I heard a girl say, make it easy for the next girl. You know, don't just outdo it and make it so elaborate that the next girl that hosts feels like she has to keep up. I mean, can we just get past everything has to look like Pinterest? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, I love that you brought that up, Ellie, is because there are people, and I almost feel like someone's out there, and this is the enemy is lying, making you feel more isolated, thinking, oh, they all have these groups. No, we have been intentional. And so you go be intentional to invite someone to your house today. So what's next?
Another thing that I wanted to point out is that she was the first convert in Europe.
Yeah.
In all of Europe, Lydia was the first disciple. And she was the foundation of the church at Philippi, which is where we get Philippians.
Yeah.
And so all of those verses, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Comes
We
from
wouldn't,
her.
we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for
Ellie
Lydia's
Grace. Wow.
obedience
That's
and wisdom and openness. And so how can we use our yes to change the lives of those around us?
Well, I took a hard left on this question, so y'all go first, and then I'll go. Y'all have anything?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Do the hard left.
Okay, I mean hard. Like prepare your neck.
Buckle up.
Okay, well, it's the question was, what first might God be doing through your life? What legacy of faith? And obviously we've been talking about hospitality and generosity, but not too long ago, I have been going through a season of some pretty deep inner healing, and I got a vision talking to one of my girls. I just said, I'm like the spiritual janitor of the family. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it made a lot of sense to me of like, I'm just doing everything I can to make my legacy, my kids and my grandbaby. I want to set them up to receive and to run farther and faster than I ever could. And so that takes some work. And it's taken a lot of work on my part to close some doors that have been opened. And we all have it, you guys. But I've been really intentional to do those things for my kids. And so that's where I know that we went from breaking bread and pulling out the charcuterie board to deep inner healing, but it's all part of it. And had I not done the inner work, if you came over to my house, you would have felt chaos, and now you feel peace. And it's not because Kyle and I have a little more money than we did in our 20s. It's because I've gone on a journey with the Lord to let him really bring his shalom peace into me. And then that's what overflows. So, because who knows, Elliot Klein, I don't know what that little girl's going to do, but she's a world changer.
right.
So we don't know who's coming behind us is my point. You don't
Really
know
good.
what your really small act of obedience is going to open the door. And the Lord is going to use it for the legacy he has. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. When you're talking, and I think about you and your granddaughter, think about the impact that you've talked about your grandma having on your life. And if you're like, if she, I have goosebumps, it's like, if she has the bar here and she did that for me, what are you doing for your little nugget?
Oh,
that's
great.
awesome, Shauna.
I hadn't thought about that. Thanks
It's
for that,
a great
Kimmy.
legacy. Beautiful.
And you had to go to the hard places in order to set that up for your kids and for Elliot.
And it's worth it. If you'll do it, it's worth it. Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Shauna.
Thanks, girl.
It's not easy going to those deep places and those hard places.
No,
but
it is not.
It's worth it.
Don't let the lip gloss fool you. Girl, yesterday I was in a puddle. But I mean, I'm just not willing to back up from what he has. And again, it's like what I said, what you feed will grow. And when you've really encountered the Lord, there's nothing. He ruins you in the best way, And so I think Lydia was ruined. Yes, she had a thriving business in the marketplace, and let's just go off on Shauna's interpretation. She probably had the finer things. Her home probably was beautiful and all those things, but she still chose.
Yeah.
She chose the kingdom.
Mom, I think you could relate to Lydia in the way that you have started many businesses, been a part of all the businesses that you and Dad have started, Elevate Him, Omega, the screen printing back in the day, all of those things. But you also had 2 little kids and faith and friends and a marriage. What was that like for you?
Well, it was really funny because I went from teaching school to staying at home with a baby and thinking, I can't just stay at home and take care of a baby. I got to do more. And so this business kind of fell into our lap just to start it. I got a magazine in the mail, and it was on screen printing and embroidery. And Mark was gone at work, and he came home, and I said, hey, I think I want to start a company. He was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of tired of clipping coupons. You know, that was back in the coupon days. And so we came up with a business title together, Outfitters, etc. And so literally I had Tucker on my hip, and I would knock on doors of different businesses and say, you know, do you need T-shirts or hats for your company?
I love that.
I would love to help you do that. And so I found a Christian business eventually that helped us with it. And so, you know, I didn't do the actual manual labor, but I took the orders and had them done. And so it was a great season. And then just with ministry, you know, realizing I didn't want my kids to feel like they were second best.
Yeah.
And so I always told Mark, you know, I want to be there with you, but I also want our children to know they're important.
Yeah.
And so that was a hard balance, because there was times he was traveling and he'd want me to go with him. And sometimes I would, and sometimes I'd say, no, I need to stay home with them. I don't want them to feel like someone else is always taking care of them. So that was important for me, for them to feel important.
Yeah. That's good. Discernment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful as one of those kids. Just one, for your sacrifice, that now growing up and being on this side of it, knowing where y'all were, all those trips and all the days, the gotcha days, the birthdays, the things that you miss when you have to fight for and serve for the kingdom like Lydia did, but also thankful for the times that you stayed.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
You're worth it, for sure.
Yeah. So sweet.
So, Shauna, what do you have?
Close
to
us
share
out.
us?
Okay. Well, here's what's rolling around in my spirit. Pay attention to your passions and take the bull by the horns. Now that's a word that the Lord gave me, but we just want to leave you with encouragement that whatever God has gifted, the passions and the dreams in your heart, He can use it. He wants to use it. He put it there. And then don't be afraid to take the bull by the horns. Invite somebody in. Do whatever He's asking you to do. As Mark says, small steps make big wakes. Is that what he says?
Lakes.
Drops in the lake.
Drops in the lake. Oh gosh,
We're listening. We really do listen to you.
Whatever, but you know what I'm saying. Just do it. But we just want to encourage you, and we're just super glad that we don't take it for granted that you spent time with us today. And so just be encouraged by Lydia.
Small drops make big lakes. Have a great day.
Thanks so much for listening to the Unbridled Life Podcast. We know your time is valuable, and we hope we bring real and relevant content that helps you live that unbridled life. If you want to help us spread the message, you can rate or review the podcast on whatever platform you like to listen to us, and share it with a friend or two. If you want to know more about who we are and what we're doing, head on over to theunbridledlifepodcast.com and learn more.